Howdy, howdy, ho. Welcome back to the show. First thing, there's lots of noises and stuff. I'm just in my backyard. I don't have a podcast studio. I don't have a budget to be able to do those things. I'm using a shotgun microphone on my camera, so that's kind of how things are going to be. But yeah, welcome back to Worlds. This is my first video episode on YouTube. I'm going to be on YouTube, Facebook, TikTok, Twitter, Instagram, all the social medias from now on. Main podcasts are going to be up Tuesday and Friday. Wednesday, Thursday are going to be two smaller of the best portions from the Tuesday podcast. Saturday, Sunday are two of the smaller portions from the Friday podcast. So yeah, but today my first guest for the video portion, I'm continuing Worlds, is Blake Vincent Cuny. Blake Vincent Cuny is a director, creative, entrepreneur, golfer, and a whole host of other things. He's most well known for creating the highest grossing surf movie of all time, View from a Blue Moon, with two-time world champion and surfing powerhouse John Florence. But he's also done a whole host of other things that we get more into in this conversation. I could kind of ramble on about this guy all day. I've been looking up to him and following his work since I first watched View from a Blue Moon in 2015, but I'd rather just get into this conversation with my guest, Blake Vincent Cuny. Enjoy.
Hey, ladies and gentlemen.
Good morning, skier matters.
Oh, hey.
I'm pretty good right now.
Welcome to Worlds. You made your first documentary about a friend getting into the Little League World Series in the Little League capital of the United States, which was, oh gosh, I forget what it was called. What was the name of that town?
Williamsport, Pennsylvania.
Yeah. So are you from the East Coast?
No, I'm not. I'm from San Diego, California.
Okay.
I went to high school in Vista, California, and then lived the last 10 years in Oceanside.
Got it. Okay,
Yep.
cool. So you made that film and then went to Pennsylvania when you were 12. So what sparked that initial interest in making documentaries and stuff?
Yeah, so I don't know. It was I've always used making documentaries, and I guess really early on it was an excuse to be at a place that I wanted to be. So I was 13 at the time, technically in baseball years, but all my friends were 12. They were really good at baseball. The whole team that was basically half of my team went on to they did super well regionally, nationally, and then ended up going to the Little League World Series. And I was like, well, I'm just going to go film every game. Screw it. Why not? So it was film the first one, and it was just riding my bike down to the thing. And the next thing you know, you just keep doing it. And you're like, I'm in Pennsylvania. That's ESPN. This is crazy. So for me, it was just a cool way to be a part of something, that was really cool. And that's all I wanted to do. And then at the end of it, I was like, everyone wanted to see the footage. So I was like, gosh, shit, I guess I better edit this together. Sold back DVDs to all the parents and made $400. And I was like, well, that was pretty cool.
As a 12-year-old, that's a lot of money.
Yeah. Totally. So I was like, all right, well, that's a cool way to make money. And I love technology, and I just loved what you could do with it. I had and then when I got to the editing, I'm like, oh, I need a new computer, and then I bought a new computer, and I was excited about Apple tech at the time. And just, it kind of brought together all the things that I liked at that age, which was technology, cameras, and then people that I wanted to be around. So it was I could be the champion of tech and nerdy stuff and new music and bringing it to them while they're playing baseball. And now looking back, I think that's what really evolved me and working with a lot of surfers later in my, in 18, 19, 20, right after the documentary, I kind of casually filmed stuff, I would film my buddies surfing or, made little skate videos and stuff like that, but didn't really have this passion of I'm going to be a filmmaker kind of thing. It was just something I did. And then I got injured when I was 16 in Mammoth, ruptured my spleen. Doctor said I couldn't do any activity for 6 months. Otherwise I could re-rupture it and go to sleep and die. So that was kind of a good consequence to not do anything. So I couldn't surf, couldn't skate, couldn't, do anything for a long time. All healed now. But that's when I picked back up the camera again and just started filming what was around me. I was interning at a surfboard factory at the time. And they were sponsoring Sebastian Zietz. So I went up to Lowers and filmed him. And then that led me to just being the local film kid for events and stuff like that, which led me to an internship at Transworld Media. And then I was there for 2 years in high school. worked with the great team there of Chris Cote, Aaron Checkwood, Sam Allen, and really like learned how to make content and media through the, the great video staff there.
What changed from making those home videos to like actually, like you said, you learned how to make the proper videos and whatnot?
Yeah, I
Like
mean,
effective storytelling.
yeah, well, I'm still working on that, but
We all are.
technically speaking, like I think there was more of a drive from me to want to be more involved in the action sports community and like see myself having a career around board sports or the media of it.
Where did that
And
come from?
I just think they were like the coolest guys in town. Like I love surfing. All my friends were surfers. I knew I was never going to be a professional surfer. Um, but like being around the media team at Transworld, like they were a really cool group of guys. Like I grew up reading Transworld and it was like, well, this seems like a really easy pathway to be around something that I love. And that goes back to like what I did when I was, filming the baseball team, was just like, this is going to give me an opportunity to be around like the people I want to be around, the sports that I want to be around. And I like felt like, perpetuating surfing and, the media of it and the storytelling of it was important for the legacy of it. And, that was like just what drew me, I guess, to surfing. And
Did you ever want to be a professional surfer?
I think I did, like every kid,
Yeah.
not, it was a short dream. Like you do a contest and get absolutely smoked by Kalohe Andino at 14 when he's surfing 2 divisions up. You're like, yeah, probably not. This isn't probably going to work.
I think it's really interesting because, for example, like I started filming to fit in with my friends. So all my friends were super good skiers. And I was like, well, I suck at skiing and I don't have the balls to do double backflips at age 14. So I'm just going to grab a GoPro and film them. And I garnered like a lot more respect. And then that blossomed into what I do today, which is like, I actually enjoy it. But I just find it interesting, like hearing your story and you actually had that interest at a younger age versus like, I wanted to be a professional skier, but then I just kind of figured out, like you said, that you just aren't going to make it. And then like, how can I still be around this sport, but not be a professional at it, I guess.
Totally. And I think that was probably like early on, that was like very much the incentive or, like, I guess just simple like goal, right? Was just like, just make this whole thing work and be able to go to Hawaii, like how do I get to Hawaii? And then when I was in Hawaii, it's like, okay, how do we go to Tahiti? And it was more about seeing these places. And it's like, well, if I, document it, they're going to pay for me to go there. So I'm going to get to see all these places. And it was like, how do we get the world checklist? And that's kind of was like the simple way it started. And then as that progressed and I like had started going to more places, having more and more relationships with professional surfers, I started working with Jordy Smith, just simply, I think, because I was available and willing. He's like, hey, do you want to go to South Africa for 2 months? And this was like December 20th. And it was like,
you were 17, right?
Yeah, 17 or 18. And I like didn't have a passport. I didn't, never been international. I mean, I've maybe been to Mexico, but like nothing like this size. And I was like, all right, yeah, fine. That sounds fun. And I went and, I was there for 3 months, first Christmas out of high school, away from my family, like big kind of things that just didn't really matter because I was like, that was what my goal was and wanted to be there, and worked with Jordy for about a year.
What did you learn working with Jordy? Just like, I mean, I could imagine it'd be pretty 0 to 100 going from just being at home to like being in a completely different place with like different friends, different family, and like just your job.
Yeah, I actually like one of my first trips ever was with Corey Lopez, and we were doing a little hurricane hunt series on the East Coast, went to Costa Rica with Alec Parker, and Corey's just like an absolute professional, like in terms of how he handles being a professional surfer. And he's worked with every major photographer that's ever been in surfing. So he was like such a great person to like be super direct in how he wanted me to like be a part of the trip, document stuff. And like, that was my introductory to it. And since he has like such a high bar of, perfection in how to document surfing, it felt pretty easy after that. And I felt like the biggest challenge working with other athletes was getting them to tell me what they wanted or didn't want and just being super honest with me. And that was like the next learning curve, because I started with the guy who was just like, I want this, and don't do this, and this. And then working with other athletes, getting that comfort level with them to be able to feel like I don't like that or I like this, was the next, I would say, sort of challenge. So anyways, yeah, went to South Africa with Jordy, and foreign country, driving on the wrong side of the road, just all sorts of just like the creature comforts that you don't know about. You know, you're away from your friends, you're with people that are 4 and 5 years older. Just trying to learn how to be in an environment that you're uncomfortable in. But usually that's where you do your best stuff, is when you're outside your comfort zone. So like I kind of was thriving in it in a way. But yeah, that was super cool.
Super
cool trip.
So you worked with Jordy Smith and Carissa Moore, who both were on Red Bull. I don't know if they were both on Red Bull at the time, but what are the main differences filming like Jordy versus Carissa Moore, like male and female side of things? Especially then, things have changed now with like equal pay and stuff, but like I think the surf industry, like male and female, was a lot different back then.
Yeah, definitely. Well, I mean, both projects were funded by Red Bull, and in the eyes of Red Bull, I think their vision of equality has been always, if they're a Red Bull athlete, I don't care their race, creed, age, or, you know, male or female sex or ethnicity or anything. They're a Red Bull athlete, and that comes to a certain level of standard of how they're treated within that company, which was super cool to see. Like, this is 2011, and you know, I feel like it's before a lot of those equality issues and the advancements that the WSL have done just recently had really come into effect. But I think that's something that Red Bull has always done, is just,
so they were ahead of the curve in that respect.
I would say so, without forcefully trying to be. They were just, you know, you're a Red Bull athlete, Carissa Moore is going to get the same resources and effort and energy as Julian Wilson or Jordy Smith. Like,
that's cool.
It was really cool. And I feel like she did get that, you know, from them. But it was really interesting that I think the biggest two differences in both working with both of them was that I was documenting Carissa through contests, and I had never really been that close in on the inner circle of a competing athlete at the highest level. So that brought like you know, that brings a certain level of integrity that you need to have to make sure that you're creating a healthy environment for that athlete to compete at the highest level. As where with Jordy, he was competing too, but I wasn't really in the circle of competition, you know. We were there just to document his free surf stuff. So like the goal was very simplified. Make sure you get the wave that I surfed and do the biggest air on, and we come home and back up the footage. And that's kind of it. That's priority number one. But with, you know, being in that inner circle of an athlete competing at the highest level, is just like the documentary part of it, especially when there's only 4 of you on those trips, is pretty low, not on the priority list. It's like, yeah, we want to document it, but it's also about her winning. And that's where, you know, you kind of band together as a family, with her coach, her dad, her sister, you know, like you just got to make sure that that's like impeccable, of a group, and you're a team, and you're showing your support for, you know, her being there. So those were just the different challenges, I think, was just like full competition mode. And I was documenting like everything behind the scenes, how she was feeling, what she was going through, you know, so much more, because the Red Bull wanted like more of like a episodic, holistic look at her winning her first world title, is where working with Jordy was just make sure you capture all the A action, and then we'll tell the story later. So
yeah,
totally different. And just, yeah, I would literally fly, like I'd go to Australia for three events with Carissa for the WSL or ASP, what it was then, leave like Sydney, fly to South Africa for a month in between the contest break. And then once we were done filming with Jordy would go to the same contest. I would fly with him, and then I would go with Carissa. And then that would be kind of that year was just like on, off, on, off, on, off. It was pretty crazy.
Wow. Especially at that age, it sounds like a roller coaster.
Yeah, definitely. But everything was just like one foot in front of the other, you know. It's just like get on the next flight, you know, wake up the next day, shoot the next thing, you know. It didn't seem like it was a roller coaster until you look back on it.
True. So you had a quote in the you did an article with the Inertia like a little over a year ago, And you had a quote that talked about how you kind of like learn to, in order to tell the stories of your subjects the best, by like living that with them and establishing relationship with their family members. And like, I mean, especially with John, but did that kind of start with Carissa? Like you said, how you were like with her parents and it was a little more intense than just like getting the A action that you were talking about.
Yeah, definitely. And I think what I was alluding to in that quote is just it's so important for, in these small environments that are, small. I guess what I'm trying to say is just that, like, when you're in a small environment with a high level athlete like Carissa, Jordy, and then later John, is like their family and their friends are so tight knit. And you're saying, like, yeah, I have this goal to make this film about you, but that comes with so much more because you're requesting a certain level of access into their headspace, literally lives, and asking so much of them that comes, you have to bring a certain level of respect to how they live their lives, and make sure that you're a part of that security, that they feel like they can trust you to tell their story in a way that is reflective of who they are now and who they want to be in the future and how they want to be remembered in their respective sport. And that takes a lot of energy and time, to understand all the nuances of how they react with certain people and how they, feel on the morning of a contest, of a final, and, when to put the camera there, when not, and all these different things, and learning their quirks and making sure that the comfort's there that they'll like trust you to be able to get what you need and not close off. It's challenging. And I think that's stuff that I didn't really know in the moment, and with time and looking back on, some of the conflicts or the flare-ups or the problems that I had in those moments, I think a lot of it was in that, and hindsight's always 2020. And then also looking at it of like, if I wanted to accomplish something like that again, it's like, it's establishing that trust barrier with those people. And I think, like, I don't think Martin Scorsese has to do that with Leonardo DiCaprio. I think it's pretty clear cut that, like, he's an actor and he's showing up to set to portray this character, and he's going to give you everything to portray that character, and he's acting. And I don't think that's the same case of like myself as a director interacting with John or Jordy or Carissa. It's more about learning who they are and being able to place a camera in those moments that they are going to give you that best performance, which is just totally different ways of getting sort of an A-level performance out of A-level athlete or person.
It's interesting how you made that comparison, because in a way the job of Martin Scorsese is to capture what Leonardo DiCaprio is doing at his best, which is similar in that you have a high level athlete or high level actor or whatnot. But the difference is that Leonardo DiCaprio will do 20 takes, whereas if you're with Carissa Moore on a contest day, you're not going to get another shot at it, because she's focused on being a competitor. She's not an actress. And I mean, like, you can go, I mean, I've been on shoots where you'll be like, okay, can you do this thing? Or that seems kind of cheesy, or like, oh, can you walk this way or do something like this that seems effective? But then you can just tell that the athlete is just kind of not really into it, because that's not what they're there to do. But yeah, it's an interesting thing for sure.
Totally. But yeah, I mean, that was, and then so much of it too, it's like you almost ask them to do another try at it, and it's worse, because they don't know how to, once they think about it, I'm like, oh, that was really cool. Can you do that again? And they're like, what was really cool? Like, I don't know what you're talking about. And so it's like, you just establish those those are the knowns of like, this is what it is. And then you go, okay, how do we create a capture, how do we set up our cameras, our people in a way that we're, knowing that's our weakest point, but we can make that our biggest strength by like almost just setting like booby traps for them. It's like not always about the thing you're asking them to do. It's maybe you ask them to do something, and then it's their reaction is what you're looking for. And it's how do you get what you're looking for out of someone in a documentary space, where it's not like they're feeling like they have to perform to get every element of it. Obviously they're performing at their sport, but making them look best in the other parts of it. It's miscues. It's how do you get them to do what you want in a way that they don't feel like they're doing anything at all.
Yeah, that was a great little soundbite. How do you get them to do what you want without making them feel like they're doing it? Yeah, that's interesting. That's like the ultimate challenge though, for sure, as far as like making these action sport films. So just to skip forward a little bit, so you worked with Jordy a little longer, and then eventually you met John on a surf trip. And then you at one point you had a decision whether to go back to South Africa or to Hawaii with John because he invited you there. Is that right?
Yeah. That's
so
correct.
Why did you decide to go to Hawaii with John and not back to South Africa with Jordy?
Honestly, at the time, it was a really, really tough decision. In a lot of ways, I felt like I was leaving Jordy hanging. I probably wasn't the most attuned to giving people the most long-led information. It was probably a short-term decision, and so it was super tough. But I think one of when I boiled it down to what the opportunities were, and John and I were the same age. Jordy's a couple of years older. We were a lot more like-minded in our view of what we thought, a collaborative project would be. He was into photography, loved to skateboard, loved to snowboard. We just were very much on, it just seemed like we clicked. At the time, it was actually from a, if you look at it from a financial-ish decision, it was a tough choice. I mean, at the time, John was really not known, and people were like, is he going to fall off? Is he going to become the next Jamie O'Brien? Is he going to be the next Kelly Slater? Nobody really knew. He was on O'Neill at the time. His contract was coming up. And on the other flip side of that, Jordy was like the newest kid in town, going to win so many world titles, just signed the Red Bull deal. O'Neill was like their poster boy and all these things. So it was like, well, this is kind of tough. John's, I believe in his potential, but that's more than, you can bet on of is he really going to be, the prodigal son that everyone says he's going to be. But I think more so than anything, it really came down to, I saw an opportunity to actually get a film to direct. Kai Neville was actively directing Jordy's project at the time, and I was helping with sort of the digital and web videos and editing those, and then being like his personal cinematographer to get all the action. But I just didn't see a very short-term pathway to get in a position to actually direct a film, and with John I did, and I think that's when it really came down to it. That's what kind of pushed me over the edge to go work with John. And not that was guaranteed by any means. The opportunity with John was to go film him for a swell in Hawaii. He had ambitions to want to make a bigger project. But at the time he was working with some people already. And it just, I felt through hard work and proof of concept that was a position that I could be in. And that trip went swimmingly well in Hawaii. And, then we started getting to work on the first project.
So you worked on, so the first project is done, but you made Begin Again, and then Enjoy before those, correct?
No. So actually
done
first. So we set out, he had already filmed some a crazy swell in Tahiti. So he had kind of already had it, some action built for it. And then he had a pretty good stack of Hawaii footage from Pipe and some airs and stuff like that. And he wanted to go to West Oz with Matt Nelby, and then he wanted to film a part in South Africa. And then that was kind of it. And then just kind of arranged those into what evidently became Done. There was actually one short film in there called Departure Delayed, because I had gone out and filmed all this thing. John bought a Red. I was figuring out even how to edit with Red footage at the time, because it was so early on and it was all a learning process for me. I was determined to high hell to figure everything out. And then in that film, I was the producer, the, director, I mean, everything. You could list out every credit there was. And I think I did it, other than the other, great shooters that were on the project. But I was negotiating the deals with how to get it on iTunes and, doing all the music licensing and everything like that. And the music licensing took forever.
Always a pain.
Yeah. And I just didn't know, I was going into it so green, and now it's it's seemingly easier because you've done it a million times. But so it took forever, and John and his mom were just like, hey, when's this thing coming out? I'm like, it's done. We love it. But I'm just sitting in here waiting for a green light or a thumbs up or a thumbs down, Gladiator style, from the music supervisor. And then we put out a part called Departure Delayed, and that was like our first release. And it was like in the like waiting for the film to come out because everyone's like, when's it coming? When's it coming? And of course, we released a trailer saying it's coming this winter, and then it was January, and you know how it goes. Everyone forgets that now, but in the time, it was like the end of the world. You know that it was like 4 weeks late or something like that due to music licensing. So we put that Departure Delayed pieced out. It had like the really famous backflip at the end credits. That was like
Insane.
was like, yeah, it was like the first of his web edits that went insane. Then we dropped Done. How
would you characterize Done?
Raw, gritty.
I love young. I love the part at the, I don't know if it's the last part, but the Tahiti with the dirty, I don't know if it's Dirty Mike, but like, it's like the alarm song.
Yeah. Killer Mike.
Killer Mike. Yeah.
Yeah. At the time, rap music hadn't been used in a surf part.
It was all hard rock.
It was like hard rock, and then like weird, like surfing went through its like techno phase because the Australians like probably made the, you know, like Montage, Taj Burrow and Joel Parkinson and Mick Fanning probably made all the best surf movies in like the mid 2000s, and especially with like Billabong and all that. And then the rise of Kai Neville with all that techno, it was just like very techno and hip forward. And then yeah, we did that, and that like rose controversy, and you know, it was its own little thing. But I guess that's what's so fun about those little projects is you can say so many things with just by a music choice or a shot choice, and you don't really have to yell it from a pedestal as to how you feel or something in the way something should be. It's just about all the little choices in a project like that speak so much louder than actually telling anyone anything.
True that.
Yeah. And then after that, we went on a crazy run of like just web edits, and those were all like the goal. Once we finished Done, the main goal was to get rid of all of his footage with the O'Neill stickers, because he's, you know, like you put it in a place that was of value, like, hey, we have a great selection of footage, but John's going to be signing a new contract, and once that happens, the sticker changes, that footage is now considered old.
Absolutely.
So,
yeah.
And the new sponsor doesn't want to promote footage with the old sponsor logo on it. So it was kind of like, okay, this is the cleanse of that. And then essentially we had always talked about, you know, a bigger project. We want to make something bigger. And we saw the success of Done. And we were just like, we need to make something bigger. And we kind of used, now looking back, Done was like the scouting mission for the next film that we ended up making. And just sort of like a practice run for all of us. But yeah, that was a cool film. And then we dropped a bunch of other films in after that in between while we were making the next project, but I'll shut up now.
No, you're good. No, keep talking. You're the guest. So
yeah,
no biggie. But, so yeah, that obviously led to View from a Blue Moon, which, as far as scale and then budget, how did you go about like managing that? Because in a way, like Done was in a lot of those video projects seemed like you had other shooters and stuff, but like you said, you managed most of it. But then you go from that to like a $2.2 million budget and being able to say like point on a place on the globe and just like, let's go there. I mean, obviously it was more complicated than that, but how did you make that transition professionally?
Yeah, it was a very, I would say, challenging transition. I was growing up as a person. I was maturing as a director and businessman, and just all of those things coming into what had to be like the best surf movie ever made was challenging with a lot of pressure. I got brought on to the project honestly as like lead cinematographer. We had gone into the whole thing. We had finished on ton of success. Probably extremely naive to think that Hurley would have given John and I two and some change $1 million to make a movie and spin the globe and, you know, actually have it show up in 3 years time. So they brought in Brain Farm, who was a production company out of Jackson Hole, Wyoming, that were the guys behind all of Travis Rice's films, to sort of be our production liaison, to handle, you know, make sure it was actually something that
Profitable.
not really profitable, just confidence that they could sign a check to someone, and it's just not going to two kids on the North Shore at the time, like it
Because you
needed
were
to go
like
to-
21 or 22, right?
yeah, I was 21, I think, when they awarded the project, and that's when it greenlit, and then I think it finished and I was 24.
Okay.
So it was 3 years. But anyway, so I got brought on lead cinematographer for the project. There was some weird like bad blood in the beginning between Brain Farm and ourselves, like early on in the project, just kind of like getting everyone on the same page. They had a way that they made films, and it was extremely successful in the backcountry and with Travis and everything. But it just didn't translate to the fast moving nature, I felt like, of surfing and John. So we had to kind of have like a come to Jesus moment after the first shoot. And like, there were options on the table of like, okay, do we just stop this thing now, cut our losses, and say we got a really great Hurley campaign out of it? Or do we, reshuffle the deck, figure this out, make this work, and keep pushing forward? And then that's when I got brought on as officially then as the director. And that was probably like just after the first 6 months of project kicked off. And then that just like demanded me to like, I had to really step up, learn really how to delegate. I couldn't really shoot everything anymore. That's when Eric Knudsen came on way more full time, who's now John's full-time DP and cinematographer at Parallel C. And it was a 2-year journey, of making that film in production. We went, to Tahiti twice, Western Australia, like the bush in South Africa, all over with larger teams than John or I were ever comfortable with, in those type of locations, and just helicopters here, like just the challenges of the Phantom camera, and then like learning to deal with all that media, like the amount of gear that you would take, 15 cases here, there, like just we're like trying to learn it from a bottom up perspective, and adapting it big production to surfing was just it had a ton of challenges. And then God, where do you start? That thing's so complex. But yeah, no, so that's kind of how it all came to be. But realistically looking back, it's like it was the coolest opportunity to learn the highest tech in cameras, tell the coolest story about like one of my best friends, and make a film that did everything that I wanted to do. Like that was the ultimate goal for me, was to create that film, because it allowed me to kind of do everything creatively I'd ever dreamed of. And it's pretty awesome to say that you can do that at 24.
Yeah. I couldn't imagine being in that position. It's super cool. But I mean, you earned it by putting in all the work, making all the little stuff, and moving from person to person. So I pulled a lot of quotes from the Inertia article just because I thought it was so good. So I'm just gonna like ask a little bit more about some of the things you said. But basically you talked about how making View, you were trying to like being able to communicate who we are, that being John really is. And how did you go about doing that? Sorry.
Oh yeah. I mean, that was the biggest challenge. I mean, I think with working with Brain Farm and Hurley, and I mean, they're no slouches in telling a story. I mean, our main boss at Hurley, Evan Slater, was the editor of Surfer Magazine for like almost 10 years. So it's like, these are all, and they're looking at me like, come on, we need to tell a story here. What's the story? And most films are built around a story, and for us, it was like, that was a really hard one to distill as to how this, if there wasn't like an actual story, how would someone actually want to watch it if there's no story? It was like a weird thing that we didn't comprehend, because realistically there was no story. The story was the surfing, and that was supposed to be enough. Was like, set up John in a way to where it's not telling you directly what's going on. You're just supposed to go on and buckle up, and you're supposed to feel how we felt when we were there. And it's more of like a visceral journey, with a lot of great surfing in it, as to how those trips went. And that's the story, is the feeling you walk away from watching it. And that was really, really hard to communicate to people who wanted like a log line, a synopsis, and everything. And
A pitch deck.
yeah, and like I was just like beating my head against the wall and was like, I'm not trying to be like obtuse here, but like I'm trying to explain something that I don't know how to explain, and the lack of a story is not an appropriate answer to what's the story. So I ended up like taking every influence in YouTube video and just I made the movie like with existing footage like on like the first year, and like just edited like a 60-minute thing via like the whole, and I like just played it for them. I'm like, we're gonna go make that. And they're like, oh, okay, when can it be done? And like that was kind of like the vision. And then everyone got on board with that. And we were just like kind of had this working cut. And then we would place in, you know, when we'd finish the section, we'd place
shots.
it in. Yeah.
Wow.
And that's kind of like how I was able, I'm like, well, shit, I didn't get here by being a writer. I didn't get here by being you know, like I don't give speeches. I'm not a public speaker. So why am I, you know, I'm looking at all my strengths and I'm like, but I'm a really great editor and I know what I want this thing to look like. So why don't I use my best communication tool is actually just editing something? Why don't I use that to show people what I'm thinking? And then that was kind of the unlock for me. It was like, and that kind of evolved into other things of just like, just know what your strengths are and just do those. And then if you're weak at it, hire someone or delegate it to someone else that can do it, because there's no reason that you should be wasting your time on something you suck at. Like it's just pretty clear. And I think that was like the first step in that journey of like figuring out the story and communicating what that story was and getting the key people involved to buy into it and support it and want to see that vision come to life. And I think that's you know, the hardest part of the job of being a director is making sure that the people, investors, studio, are invested in the vision that you're trying to make and want to not only just approve of it, but also be your biggest cheerleader. Because by the end of it, everyone at Hurley, everyone at Brain Farm, everyone on John's team wanted to see that vision succeed, and it became something bigger than myself. And that's why that film is so great, was because you had, you know, over 200 people work on this film that saw the vision of John, saw the vision that we had, and wanted to put everything that they had into it to make sure that it was the best it could be. Because every little small piece of it was insane when it comes down to the sound design, to the mix, to the shots. To
Shout
everything.
out to Keith White.
Yeah, shout out to Keith White and actually Martin Durkov on that project. He was they had a collaborative effort on that one, and I think that was really cool.
I love the teaser trailer audio.
Yeah. But all those little things. And then, you know, the other side of directing is like working with John, who's also executive producer, lead, you know, actor, real Ben Affleck here, and just making sure that it's all working hunky dory. And I think we went through the establishment of that movie to figure out what it was by spending a year saying what it wasn't. You know, we wanted to do something that had never been done before. We did, you know, like we didn't want it to have like a fake story. So what was the real story? Well, there wasn't one. So how do you, you know, you just like through trial and error, you're just saying it's not this, it's not this. And then it ended up becoming what it was. It's probably not the most efficient and economical way to get some, you know, make a project, but that's how we did it. And that's why I think it was so great, because we sat with it for 3 years and really got to hone in on what it was and like reshot stuff and, you know, redid it. We had like the benefit of time, which is also like turns into the paradox of choice. And then you're like, well, we can do anything. So what do we do? You know, at least with most projects, you have constraints. It's like, oh, I can't do that. There's not enough budget. Can't do that. There's not enough time. Can't, you know, this is like, that's not a problem. That's not a problem. What would you do? And you're like, oh shit.
But that makes
Yeah.
it more difficult, because then it's like when you're given a prompt, like, okay, write about this. Then it's like, okay, well, I at least you have some direction. But I could imagine how it could be kind of difficult, because if they're just like, make something amazing and you have more time if you need more time and more money if you need more money. And it's like, well, like, holy crap, I don't even know like where to start.
Yeah. And then you just start to go into like the never been done's before. And you're like, well, what if we tried to do that? Okay. Like, what if we put a Phantom on a helicopter? Okay. Well, what if we put audio in the water with a phantom camera? Like, what would that do? And then you're just trying stuff, and then that influence, like the technology influences the creativity, and then you stumble upon something, and then it changes the, that section, which changes the flow of the story structure. And then, it's just, it's like, it was just like a cool create party the whole time. We would like shoot all day, 3 cinematographers, huge pipe swell, and then we'd come home, put it on the projector in the backyard, start the barbecue up, and just watch the footage from the whole day. We're like, wow, that was cool. And it's like, when's this going to come out? Probably like 14, 18 months from now, and it's just like, that kind of shit was crazy.
Was it hard to go so with that long of a timeline, like into the years, is it hard to have an idea in the beginning and then like, because I mean, that must feel so far away. So how did you like maintain your idea from the beginning, or not even maintain it? How did it change over time into like what you thought it would become?
I mean, I felt it was pretty dang close to what it set out to be, to what it was. There was some things that like didn't happen due to like certain restrictions, or like just it just wasn't feasible, or like we tried to reach for the stars and just didn't get off the ground with certain things. Other things happened without even like thinking about it that made it better than it was. It was just the constant perseverance each and every day, like just never giving up. Just every day we're making this the best film at, like we were in that and locked that. And there were like 75 days straight that we were just, that's all we eat, slept, and breathed was that film, and then you'd break for like 2 weeks. Like, holy shit, what just happened? And then you go back and do it for 60 days. And, a team of 5 people solely focused on one thing, you can move worlds, it truly was just like, persistence beat any sort of resistance in that film not getting done. We were just persistent little 20-year-old kids with nothing else to do, no families, no agenda other than making this film. I mean, even for John, I don't think John would sign himself up for that film in that way again. I mean, he surfed so many days that was like 15 hours, like literally from sun up to sundown with like one meal, and would get sick at the end of the trip. And just like, I just don't think anyone would put their bodies through that again. And just it's just like a young capture lightning in a bottle type situation that happened. And it was pretty dang cool.
Can you talk about the quote, "My job didn't define me, my person defined me. That's what allowed me to do my job"?
Yeah, and I think that like touches upon what we were talking about earlier, was like, you have to be a certain person to an athlete in an environment to, like when you're with those people for that long and you're quote their leader of this vision of this project. Yeah, not every day is going to be your on day. It's not like you're going to come up every single morning at 6 a.m. and just be chipper and have every idea and, vision and solution to everything that goes wrong or anything that needs to be creatively figured out. And I think that, I had such a special relationship with Eric, the DP, and Darren, our water cinematographer, and John's mom and John's brothers. And it was like, they knew that I was there for the right reasons. And that was, my being determined to make this film and have it be the best reflection of John and his family and the North Shore and that community and the waves and the legacy of surfing, that I was so invested in that. And I made that clear, and I earned that through, years and years of trust and, being there in the bad times, the fun times, the sad times. And then they would pick me up on those off days, because it's like, I didn't lose my way. It's just, we're going to have some off days, and you need to have that team and that ecosystem, there to pick you up. And I think I showed that to them when they had off days, and they showed that to me when we had off days. And I think that's what allowed me to be the spokesman of that film and seeing it's getting done to the truest, most authentic nature to John, because it was a reflection of John. And that was like my first priority. It wasn't about me and my vision and this or that. It was like, we just got to tell this kid's story and make a film about him that will sit on the shelves of every surfer's movie collection for the end of time. So I mean, as much as I tried to put my thumbprint on it, it was about the opposite. It was a lot about me doing that. It's about John's story getting told to the most authentic way you could. And that comes through trust and relationships day to day in order to achieve that.
Wow. That's incredibly profound. Do you have a memory of like the best part, or like a profound memory of like when you were making View from a Blue Moon that just sticks out to you? Like a moment?
Yeah, there's one in the beginning when I when I was making that that edit of like the vision of what it was, like the vision edit. I put like a Jay-Z song in the end, and I was like, oh, that unlocked it. And I kind of had like a personal moment with the footage and like feeling like I had finished the Rubik's Cube in a way. It was like, holy shit, okay, this is going to work. And now I can buy into this vision. Therefore, I can be a promoter of this vision. Because I didn't really know, you take these creative leaps, and especially in a film, you got to take like a creative leap off a cliff. And you're like, well, my experience tells me that these elements individually will work together, but if they see that they work together as a collection, side by side is always the greatest, truest test. And it did. And I think that was a big moment for me in the beginning. I think there was another moment in production where John and I were, and this one's just sheer fun and endorphins, but John and I were filming the flying stuff on the North Shore, on Oahu. I was in the helicopter in the shot over, filming John flying a plane around the island of Oahu. And I was just like, there was one point where we were coming at each other. We were going like 120 miles an hour. He was going like 100 miles an hour, and we crossed, in which seemed like pretty close, but it wasn't dangerous given by both the pilot. John had like his instructor pilot. Our pilot was super safe, tons of trust. It was safe in all flying FAA requirements, but in our sense, we could hear each other screaming on the phone. Or on the radios, and we're just like, whoa, that was so cool. Cause we pulled up and the image was insane. And it was just like, holy crap, this is a long way from just like filming your wave in front of your house. Like we're flying into aircrafts over like Oahu, and we're smiling and screaming and just saying this is the best time ever, and it's work. Like, what? That was just kind of like the rawest, like, holy shit moment. Another cool moment or bad moment for me, we were in Tahiti for like 2 weeks, and like I was filming on this little reef thing, and I was standing there probably like 10 hours a day for like 9 or 10 days straight. And like there's no one around. It's like you got a jet ski with like a warm sandwich in it, and you're there from sun up to sundown. And I think like we were there on like the 9th day, and we were supposed to go home on like the Saturday flight. And I was just like, are you kidding me? We've gotten all of these clips. Like we're not going to be able to use any of these clips anymore. Like you've done an air, you've gotten barreled, we've got it from the water, we've got it from the, and I just broke. I'm like, I want to go home. I'm done. Like I had like a breaking point, and John will like always tease me about that moment of just like straight up breaking. Like it got me, like Paradise Island fever, whatever you want to call it, just monotony of the same exact thing. And I'm like, for him, he's probably having a blast. The waves were really fun, but like from a perspective of filming, it's like I got it, but it was crazy, like to actually like see yourself break and be vocal about breaking. I'm like, no, I'm going back in. I'm going home. I was trying to like book a flight. So that was just a memorable, laughable moment now, but at the time I was just like, I can't do it anymore. Another part was just like having, I think those moments too, like watching the footage at the end of the day with all the boys, and just like knowing how special that was, just like having that many people together at the end of each day, watching footage, being immersed in footage, having surfers like analyze different angles and what was better. And, like just that collaborative feedback. And it was just so fun. Like you'd get up and do it all over again. You'd, watch the footage, drink beers, and That was just a cool experience, just watching the footage at the end of the day with all the guys, and just, you know, when we brought out the new movie, when the movie came out, and them seeing the movie and them react to it, you know, was so fun. Just in the different tech, and then them seeing the shot over and filming different stuff and showing them places that they've lived their whole lives in a new way, and all that stuff was really cool. I'm trying to think if like it was that exciting when we actually delivered the damn thing, because I think I was so cooked.
Did you hate it at that point?
I didn't hate it. It's just like there wasn't enough of a post staff on it to be able to like delegate any of the like ending of the finishing, and like the quality control. I think like with a 57-minute, 60-minute timeline, and that many ProRes elements, and just and the motion graphics and everything, and we like the machine's real. Like I was on an iMac, it was good, but it would take like 4 hours to do an export, and if there was like one blip frame, you know, you're like, oh god, another 5 hours. I think I did that for like 4 days and just lived in a sleeping bag in the office. And like at a certain point I was like calling in buddies like, hey, I'll buy you dinner if you'll watch this with me, because like I'm like, I feel numb. Yeah, so I didn't hate the actual film, I just didn't like I was ready to be done with it.
Yeah.
Like as a task, like, because
Yeah.
I was like, I'm basically done, I'm just doing monkey work now, you know, to make sure it's really done.
And hate was a strong word, but I just meant because I've been in similar situations where you're editing day and night, like 14 hours a day for a couple days straight, and you just like you can't even tell if it's good or not anymore, and you're just like going over, like you said, all the graphics, and then you watch it all again, and then there's like that little thing that bothers you, which, and like you said, you have to restart. So yeah, I was just curious.
Working with, and then just like the key tempo moments, like working with Jack Johnson on creating a custom song was an incredibly humbling experience, and he was super cool to work with. John C. Riley was like, gave us as much respect as anyone on the world, and like lended his services and expertise to the project.
You had to record the voiceover twice, right?
Yeah, twice. I script write, like I had this like kind of lofty idea for what that little narrative section was going to be, and that was probably my weakest skill set at being a director at that time, is understanding what needed to happen in order to make something like that. And that was something that I toiled over for months and months and months, was how to figure out how to do that. And then we went and recorded the first script, and it didn't work. It just, the script wasn't there and the elements weren't there. We weren't far enough along in the rough cut to know what actually we exactly needed. So we were kind of just fishing with him. And he was just like, hey, all due respect, like take 2 weeks, go get the script right, come back. I'm more than willing to like redo it. You know, like, and he was like, so like, if there's any way I can help, if you have any ideas, like let me know. But I knew, I was like, wow, I screwed that up. You know, like I had a rushed opportunity with that. Or, you know, I'd rushed the opportunity because I was so excited and thought I could get it out of him. But, you know, learning process was just part of it. And then we ended up getting it, we re-recorded, and it went really well. And, you know, it went swimmingly, and he enjoyed the film. He said that his kids were like, wow, Dad, I can't believe you're a part of this movie. This is insane. He's like, you like won the respect of my kids. And he's like, I've been in every freaking movie under the sun. And he's like, I did some surf movie with you guys and my kids love me. He's like, it's a win for me.
There you go.
But no, just stuff like that, working with all the like sponsors, partners, family members, you know, like with that project. Hurley was incredibly awesome. Brain Farm, Chad, Kurt, all those guys were cool. Bungie, like, I mean, I don't know if I would have survived without Eric Knudsen, from just a workload perspective, but also as a friend. Darren Crawford, best water cinematographer ever in the world. He was just such a mentor. He's from Encinitas and San Marcos, where I'm from too, but like has really embedded himself on the North Shore. And that was, you know, a cool person to have with you, not being around people that have all grown up on that small town. Daniel Russo pushing the boundaries of what's possible in the water at Tahiti. getting under the lip, trying to mimic what he could do with a photo camera, with a red camera.
That one shot of
Yeah.
the lip coming over with David Bowie is pretty insane. Like right after dark too.
Yeah, and they tried that for like 3 years almost. Like they had gone back there and he had like built new housings for it. And then like, and this is where the technology pushes other stuff in Western Australia. Jack Robinson wanted to do double toe-ins with a red camera, like built down to the smallest thing. And when we built our Movi kit, we got a new battery that we had never seen before and this new mounting cage. We're like, what if we put this in a housing? We could do a follow red housing. So we sent that out, got that built. They did that. And those shots are insane, you know? And then, like the Phantom, just understanding what you can do with that and working with Chris Bryan and understanding like, well, if you do this, this is a good, you know, just understanding what's super slow motion and how you use it and what looks cool and what doesn't. I mean, we shot for as much stuff as cool in there. We shot a ton of stuff that was just like, oh, that was soggy, you know, that was horrible. Yeah, just crazy, like, I don't know, crazy shit. There's so much in that movie. Like I could talk for 4 hours on all the nuances of things that happened and didn't happen and what camera parts we ended up using. We shot the first Phantom 4K and the guy was like there sending beta firmware of the damn thing like across the world and was like, oh yeah, I don't know if this one works, try this one. And you're like, this is $150,000 camera, how do you guys not know if the firmware works? And you know, just like because we were on the cutting edge of all this stuff and through the relationships with Brain Farm, we were able to get our hands on so much stuff. And then like at the time there was like no drone. We like tested some Alta 8 stuff with a red on it, but it was so clunky. It was like at that point you might as well just fly a full-size heli. So like no drones, all heli, figuring out like, you know, I now pride myself, I can like do a like flight plan with all the pilots and stuff. And like recently on a commercial, we just did like a thing in LA with 2 helicopter to helicopter over downtown LA and landing on the tallest building. And it was like, wow, I got all those experiences from that film. And you just seeing what different elements now have geared me to have the experience to kind of do things that are relatively easy to me, because when I had to figure it out the first time, like with no real, like, okay, here's exactly how you do it. I feel like it's like walk in the park now. I'm like, oh, I've done that before in like a different country and you speak English. This is easy. Like, you know, like different shit like that. But anyways, that was a long-winded answer to a short question.
No, it's all good. So you premiered the film on Oahu on the North Shore, and then you kind of had a once again, that article, you said you had a turning point where it was like you guys said you're both good, and then it was like, do you want to make anything else? And John was like, nah, I'm like kind of just want to focus on like what he said, the performance part of his surfing. And then you were like, well, I'm just going to see where this filmmaking thing goes. And then just like that, like you moved into the commercial space, and then he started focusing more on competition, and then ended up winning his world title and whatnot. So what was the transition out of working with John like? And I mean, I could just imagine, because you worked with him for how long? How many years?
It was like 4.5.
Okay.
5.
So
Yeah.
then that I mean, I imagine that was like a pretty big transition moving in. I mean, I guess maybe just not being with John all the time, because you, in a way, you had already like kind of done the commercial stuff with like, because at the end of the day, View from a Blue Moon's like with Hurley and Monster and stuff like that. But you started to go into the commercial side, making commercials for those companies like Fat Tire and Monster and Hurley. And what was that transition like?
Yeah. So, I mean, it was pretty crazy for me. Like you said, we had premiered View from a Blue Moon all over the world. It ended up winning Surfer Poll Movie of the Year. Got raving reviews from all the media. GQ called the most stunning for surf film ever. Ended up selling the most copies on iTunes. I think out of any surf movie for sure. I don't know where it sits on the action sports list. So it did everything it needed to do, and it was successful. And that, you know, in a way gave me the confidence to be able to say, I'm going to set an unrealistic goal and it is possible to achieve it. I had set out in surfing to say, oh, it'd be cool to, like, you know, when I'm 30 or 40, win Surfer Movie of the Year. Did that with Dunn the first year in. So that was kind of absolutely crazy. And then just seeing all the success with View from a Blue Moon was insane. And then, I got to a point where like I was talking to John and he was like, I want to go, I'm good. Like that was a lot of energy. That was a lot of effort. I want to go and win world titles. And I'm like, that's what you're supposed to do to be the most complete surfer of all time. And then he ended up winning 2 or 3 world titles in the Eddy and all these things. And for me, I didn't want to be involved. There was a position for me there to kind of shoot, edit, and make content around John, but without that guiding light of the big project or, really big goal, my person gets burnt out. So I knew that if we weren't working together to create the best surf film version 2 or something akin to those aspirations, I would burn out on the road and just not really be happy in that space. And that's kind of the conversation we had. Is like, hey, if there's not big ambitions here with filmmaking and content creation with you, like, I don't think it's probably the healthiest place for me to stay in, and just sort of go along for the ride, because, it's just not where I wanted to be. So I kind of had looked outward to like, okay, well, what is the next step? What do I lack? And I kind of like, as much as View from a Blue Moon was, we had crews and I had to delegate and work with a lot of people to get that film done. It took 3 years to do the production. So I was like, knew that my biggest weakness was running a set of large scale, 50, 80 people sets on a day. And I'm like, how am I going to get that experience with the, resume that I have currently? And that was with commercial filmmaking. So I went in and started interviewing with different production companies. Missing Pieces was a place in LA that I had met with, and then a couple other in New York. And that didn't really like end up working out. In the commercial, filmmaking pathway for a young director is very challenging. Generally, you get on a roster of a bunch of directors. That production company is very successful because of its top 2 directors. They do a ton of work with probably their 2-3 main clients. And you're on the list and you get this false sense of like excitement. You're like, I'm on this big production. I'm signed to this big production company. And people get complacent in that. And then they think that because they're there, they're going to get work, but you still have to actively build your resume, build your, reel, and do all that sort of thing. So I kind of made the decision, or forced my hand, was that I was going to start a production company with a long time advertising, veteran, and a guy named Joseph Dugan. And we started a production company called Durango Effect. And that was solely to get myself a handful of directing jobs, to build my reel and build my experience in commercials. And I think that the hardest thing for me was I had been in environments where everyone that I was working with knew what I had done or knew who I worked with, be it John Florence or Jordy, and kind of got a sense of what there was an unspoken goal of like, this is what we're trying to do. And with going into commercial advertising, you're meeting oil executives, heads of agencies from middle America, for 6 weeks out of your life. And you have to both create that trust that I was talking about earlier with John, that I had spent years crafting and forging. You need to be able to bring that in the matter of like 2 weeks in pre-production and then make the film. And I think learning how to sell myself and get that trust was a challenging thing, because it put me outside my comfort zone again. And then within that, finding your balance of like, am I being cocky and outward and selling myself, or am I being true to who I am and the way I got brought up? And that was kind of like another pivot point, I think, in the career of directing, in terms of like, where do you find that next version of yourself that's rooted in what you had, been and started as, and why you got into holding a camera and making things, and not losing that in commercial directing as you're working with bigger and bigger teams and bigger clients and all these sorts of things. So I did that for 3 years. Did a spot with Kobe Bryant for Nike basketball. We launched like an all new touring line for Harley Davidson, which was like 2 shot overs, helicopters, 100-person crew in the middle of nowhere in Tahoe. Large scale things. Did a couple of spots for Valero Energy. Did some bank stuff in Philadelphia, and just like, very vastly different people on all those projects. And then kind of through that, I would actually, do a couple projects with John. We ended up doing some web edits. So we didn't like totally just like disdain from one another. We still like kept the communication open. But yeah, so I did all that. It was like, I got the experience out of commercial directing. I knew I was sitting there. It's like, I don't want this to be my career for the rest of my life. I will do them when it makes them, makes sense. And direct commercials when the situation's right. But, it was more of an experience and learning process. And it kind of threw me. If I look at View from a Blue Moon and John Florence, it's like, that was my bachelor's degree. Commercial filmmaking was like my master's degree. And then I don't have any ambitions to get a PhD. Those are for professors and stuff like that. But so now, yeah, so that's kind of like that whole transition. And
real quick before, so you said in commercial filmmaking that you didn't want to do that for the rest of your life. Why was that?
I just didn't like the business of it. It's not something that you can really like rely on. The jobs are extremely hard to get. And I would see jobs that I put my same effort into every job, like everything I had. And some would be like absolute, just wonderful relationships and great projects, and others would just be utter disasters. And so much of that was outside of my hands in terms of like the client and the agency weren't getting together, or, there were just so many variables in terms of what deemed something being successful that were like not any of my responsibility. And it just, I didn't like the gut feeling you would get when you get a project. Like, is this going to be a good one, or is this one going to be a total nightmare? And it's not a stress that I want to live with for the rest of my life. And at the end of the day, it's not something like A View from Blue Moon where you're like, you feel like you're destined, or it's your destiny to make the damn thing. It's like, it's a commercial for a company. Like, it's great money for everyone involved. And I want to give everything I have to this. But at the end of the day, it's like, it's a transaction for people to buy more stuff or do more things. So it's like, I don't want to live and die by that. And I guess I'm like a passionate person about my filmmaking, and it's a space in which that you have to sort of shut some of that portions of that off in order to do it all the time. And I think it's like, it's awesome. And I think I had a like ton of wonderful experiences in that. It's just not something that I saw myself doing in 20 years consistently as being solely focused on commercial directing. And it's just such a dog eat dog world. It's very cutthroat. It's like, it's not something you're going to like, you get one job and it guarantees you the next. It's square one once you finish a job again, you know?
That's I've thought a lot about it, just like a lot of like commercial directing in general. I've actually never really made like a proper commercial. It's always been like with athletes and stuff like that. But one of the issues that I've had as far as like considering it as a career path is like the greater purpose, as far as like, what are you really doing? And like, how are you contributing to like society and like making people better or inspiring them and doing things like that. Like I've made films, and you have, obviously, like View from a Blue Moon, some little kid in some like part of the world that maybe he's like an hour away from the beach, like watches that and he's like, holy shit, I need to do that right now. And like, you have that profound impact. Whereas like, if you just watch like a Gatorade commercial, like sure, it could maybe have that in some way, but it's not as evident. So did you have similar thoughts as like once you started making those things, or no?
Yeah, no, I'm not. I'm pretty. I have a pretty. I guess that doesn't really bother me. I'm very open to working for an oil company, or be it a company that I don't really like. I'm passionate about because I love the craft so much, and I loved the craft. I think it was more from the holistic view of my day-to-day life throughout a 365-day calendar year, what the roller coaster ride is of pitching yourself to get a project, Then once you get the project, not sleeping, getting out of it, feeling like you need a vacation, have the vacation. Then once you're out of the vacation, you need to do like the bidding process again. And it's just like a cyclical thing, as where like I never really felt like I was building something that I was proud of. It felt transactional. And so what I arrived to is that it's all about balance, and I think that's the important thing, because there's a lot of techniques that I learned in commercials that I'm applying now to action sports and vice versa, that I'm taking. And then like, it's all an ecosystem, and it's just all about understanding the perfect balance for yourself, in terms of like which projects you take, how much of a year is for others, how much is for yourself, what what projects that are like the most exciting for you, making sure that there's space for those to develop and create those while still making commercials. And I think that that's where I'm at now, is it's just like I love both. Too much of one thing's it's not a good thing. So I think it's just about balancing both. And the right after View, I was like fully inundated in all the passion. Then I went all for like learning and challenging myself. And now I feel like I'm in a spot where I'm like very balanced and comfortable in the projects I'm making. And I don't feel like I'm stuck one way or another,
That's good. That's awesome to hear that you found that balance, because I think a lot of people struggle with that, especially in such an unpredictable industry where you don't know where your next job or where the money you're going to make is next. Because a lot of people, especially now, I think the idea of like, oh, I'm just like, I'm hustling, or I'm like not like doing the 9 to 5 or having my own company is like very idealized and like overhyped, because a lot of people don't realize that. I mean, like I personally, I don't think I'm going to work a 9 to 5 job, but like a lot of people don't realize the work that goes into it. So it's cool to hear that you found balance within that.
Yeah, I mean, I would say my work-life balance personally is horrible, but my balance in the type of work that we're doing at our company now is very balanced, in the sense of working with athletes and then working on commercials and having like a very diverse portfolio of work that we do at the end of each year, that allows for the space for me to get excited with both,
Yeah.
Still working 15 hours a day, but
Yeah. Sorry.
it's just
I inferred that your work-life balance was good.
No, I don't think there ever is. I think it's just going to be when you're retired and you you reach a point where you don't have to make another dollar, and then you just work on what you want to, and then you can choose your work-life balance. Because I have clients and things that need to get done, and it just work-life balance goes to the wayside. So, but yeah, that's a challenging feat for anyone, I think. But like you said, I think it's the whole never give up, work hard, hustle, that it's like over personified, and over idealized. And there's two different paths too. And I think that one point that people don't ever make is, yeah, it's very easy to go out there in the world and make enough money for yourself to survive and live and thrive without going to an office, but it's a different level. It's a different ladder to go get onto, to establish a company that's going to give you all the benefits of the 9 to 5, but then allow yourself to have the freedom of not having one. And that's a whole different beast. And that's kind of what I've been learning the last 2 years in starting my most recent agency, Cooney Pearson, is just like, there's a reason agencies and everything costs more money, is because there's a lot more infrastructure built in. Like we just got health insurance for our company. We're all actual technical employees of the company. All the hours and manpower that goes into administration and making sure that you have your, well insured, all your financials are in order. You're investing in the right places. You're hiring the right people. Like that's like a whole different thing, because I felt like I had, mastered in a way myself as being an independent contractor, making decent money on working on projects that I liked, but like bringing on, having overhead costs, or like that are just as much of what you on your best years as an independent. It's like a brain bustering thing, but you get comfortable with it, and you get through like big milestones, and it becomes easier. And easier and easier, but it's ever moving. It's like a cycle. It's like figure out one thing, something else breaks. Figure out one thing, something else breaks. But it's cool. It keeps you busy, it keeps you young. It's exciting. It's good to know when you own your own company that like every ounce, every time you're up till 5 a.m, that's like for the benefit of you and the company and, you know, your clients. And that's like knowing that that's where that blood, sweat, and tears is going, is back into your own company, is really cool.
So it's worth it?
Um,
Or
yeah,
is it worth it? Yeah, I'll ask that.
I would say it's worth it for sure. And I think what's been crazy in this last year, and we touched upon it earlier in COVID, and just seeing the volatility and what, you know, my business partner and I talk about is that like we thought getting a job, a salaried job at a, you know, any company is the safe route, but seeing kind of what had happened last year with all these companies furloughing people, you know, just at moment's notice is like, that's not really secure at all. And then you're stuck in an environment in which that it's really hard to find another job. So, you know, for us, we're like, we're not like thriving in March of COVID, but at the same time, we know our future, and we, in a way, felt more secure at what we were doing than anyone that, you know, was in a salaried position, just because of what was going on last year. And that was really eye-opening. That was something that I never thought I would say. But that was just through, you know, learning. There's a really great tweet thread that I tweeted the other day from this guy who's it's like a claim as a serial entrepreneur or whatever. And it's like, here's some hard truths about owning your own business that I don't think are said enough. I retweeted it like a week ago. You can find it on there. But it was just cool to hear his interpretation of it. And like, it's not for the faint of heart. It's not for everybody, you know, like I think you need to be honest with yourself and do a really good, you know, like test of yourself and a litmus test of realizing that you're going to have a lot more responsibility of stuff that you're not good at. And are you in a position to want to do that? Because I feel like the only reason I'm able to take on all these other roles as an owner of this company, which I'm learning every single day, in bookkeeping, administration, insurance, all these different things, building out a new post suite right now, new offices, is that I've have a base level of mastery in the craft that got me here. That is, I'm sufficient enough to where it's not like I have to start over every project that comes through the door. You know, I don't have to learn how to do the project that we're actively selling. It's like, okay, yeah, I've done a version of this. This is something that we do. I'm confident that, you know, we can get this done with, you know, in that sense, I'm not still trying to learn the craft and learn how to build a business. Because I think if you do it too early, you get into a crux of that where you're like, you might put a ceiling on yourself as to your work because you don't have the time. You're spending that extra time to build your craft, building a business, and then you're not able to, you know, push through, get the business to a spot where it needs to be because you're hindered by your skill set and your craft. So it's like, it's when you choose to hit, like, you're like, okay, do I have enough skills in this to be able to start the business to rise? And then they can both rise together. That's always been like the tricky part for me, is like, when do you feel like you haven't put a ceiling on your craft too early? Because I had opportunities to start businesses on my own earlier on in my career, and I said I just wasn't ready yet. Like, I was like,
how do you know that you weren't ready?
Because I knew there was big aspects in the craft that I didn't know. Like, and I guess the last crux I had for myself was like, do I want to go to a position where I'm like directing for like a studio level film and try and like win an Oscar? You know, like, do I want to like push through directing to get there, to do something like that? You know, a traditional Oscar, not a documentary Oscar. And I was like, I see like how far that is and the percentages of that actually happening. And like, I was like, I think I'm good. I want to, you know, turn my craft into a service and turn it into a business and build, you know, a semi-small studio slash content agency, and, you know, just make a good living at doing that, and really like start to provide a workspace for young directors and young cinematographers to work and, you know, have that same initial experience that I had like at Transworld when I was growing up. And so I got more involved in that idea of like, okay, let's get off the director, you know, perfectionism ride, and let's, you know, take it off at this stop. And, you know, I feel like I have enough of knowledge in directing and how to create content to build a business around it and build a place for the next director, cinematographer to come and work and build their career at the start of their career at, and see where those go. And that was kind of like I would say like 3 years ago, like when I was like thinking about it of like, shit, do I keep going this way or whatever, bringing it back. So that was kind of the last crux for me, because I'm not the greatest director of all time. I just knew it would take a lot more work, and the PhD kind of thing I was talking about earlier is like, I don't really want to go that far, because it's another beast to make that next click up, to be in that small group of really great directors, you know, which it takes a lot of luck and things and ways to meet people that I'm just like, I don't really want to do.
It's cool because I think when you're really young, like even younger, like, so I'm 20, even younger than me, you always like are like, I feel like when I was younger, I was never okay with like, okay, I'm just going to do this like smaller thing and not go for like, oh, I want to get the PhD in whatever industry or whatever I'm doing. But then you get older, and then it becomes so evident. Like for me now, I just know that I don't have the passion and what it takes and the commitment to just go to make Hollywood films. Like I just don't, which is very freeing in a way, because when I like, even so I'm in film school right now, but like when I first got into film school, I didn't know if I wanted to do that. And then I've met people that do that and that want to do that. And I see what they have and the passion they have for it. And I just don't watch 3 movies a day and know every quote from movies that were made 60 years ago. Like I just don't. So I just think that I totally relate to what you were saying about how getting to that PhD level, I'm not even at the bachelor's on paper or in the hypothetical way that you're saying. But it's interesting when you get to the point where you realize you're like, okay, I'm okay, like not doing this.
Yeah, totally. And that was honestly a door that I wanted to keep open for a prolonged period of time, because I saw like Spike Jonze do it, and I was like, well, shit. You know, I was like calling and following Spike Jonze's career path, coming from skateboarding, starting a skateboard company. I'm like, I just watched this dude win an Oscar, and like he was sitting, I've been at, you know, when I was a kid, he was at the same event filming skateboarding. Like that's pretty insane, to where it was like kind of in the back of my head as a possibility. You know, like when I was like 20, 21, 22. And then as I got older, just kind of really seeing what that took, and, you know, what you need to be to do that. I was like, okay, I don't really want to.
Yeah. And never say never, at least for me, but like it's definitely evident how much work and, like you said, luck that a lot of those people need. But
Yeah.
so as far as it's funny, I'll be honest. I remember I sent one DM to you and I misspelled your last name, and then I've always been bad at pronouncing your last name. So it's CUNY.
Yep.
CUNY. Okay. So
Yep.
CUNY Pearson. So there's a lot of production companies that are really popular just in LA and honestly in the world in general right now, all making commercials and stuff like that. So you came into it's 2 years old, correct?
Yeah, about that. 18 months.
Okay, 18 months old. So coming into this already like pretty saturated industry, what were the things that you knew would set you apart, and how did you go about projecting that to companies that you and clients that you wanted to work with?
Yeah, totally. So, definitely the production company is a very saturated space. And for me, like I look back on all the projects that I've done, and sort of what has gotten me the most excited, was really about, you know, the strategy at the front end of like how the content was going to be sold, advertised, how was it going to look and feel, how was it going to influence people, more so than the film itself. You know, it was like, let's get the film done so we can, you know, put it out there in the world in unique ways, and kind of the whole package. I was very like holistic in the sense of like, I knew it took all those things. Like I loved getting the buy-in from the the brand, and then making sure that, the people working on it bought into the, the vision of the actual making of the content itself, and then getting to post and, really just slicing everything up and seeing how you could take it further with like Instagram released this new output, or if utilizing paid and social and all the different elements that go into it is like what really got me excited, mostly about like what I was doing, and that was becoming more apparent when I was commercial directing and I was in a situation where I was solely just worried about the film. And I was like, yeah, but I would like go over to the agency and be like, so how are you guys like distributing this? Like, where's it going? Like, what's the ad spend? How are you cutting it up into, so, I missed that part of it, and I didn't realize how much of that I had missed. So with this company, we kind of set out to be, and we saw this void, there's this like the client agency traditional model with media company works really great for really large companies, right? It works great for Coca-Cola, Intel, AT&T. They have the money to spend it. Hell, they could probably hire 2 agencies and 2 production companies to do the same commercial and pick whichever one they liked at the end best. Like that works great. But you've seen in the recent years, there's a lot of trends towards more DTC type companies, direct to consumer, be it a Casper mattress, Hims, all these shifts in product marketing, and that's what people want. And those guys don't have the corporate structure to warrant an agency and a production company and the big whole machine of it all. So my business partner and he comes from an agency background, and he was ran all social and digital from Surfer Magazine, but came from Wedge and Lever, and we had worked together for a long time. I was his intern when I was 16 at a surfboard company.
That's funny.
Yeah.
So how things change.
Totally. He's just 2 or 3 years older than me. But we've always respected each other and what either one of us or both of us have done in our careers up until this point. And we were, both looking to move on from where we were at. And we were both at relatively small, companies that were singularly craft driven companies, be it a production company and a design firm. And we were looking at it, and, I had a couple opportunities with some of the clients that I had worked with, but I knew I didn't have the manpower to like deliver on the ambitions that some of these clients had. So that's what kind of sparked us to get in business together. And really what, was unique about our model and our niche is that we promote that we can do everything from start to finish, content strategy, production, and then distribution, and all your paid social elements too. And then all the analytics reporting that needs to be done on all the content in like a holistic 360-degree package. You'll see other companies that offer that, but like generally speaking, they're very social heavy. They don't know how to make content. And for us, we're uniquely positioned with both of our skill sets that every single one of those products or offerings, each stage of it, they're getting the best possible, people behind that. So that's what we felt was that production companies weren't offering enough in terms of services. And then agencies that were offering either the full package of it weren't offering enough of the content to be good enough to actually make waves. So there was this kind of like niche void of like, hey, if we can go to these mid-size, more transitioning companies that are coming from a space of like, they were really popular in the 90s, early 2000s, and now need to, haven't really caught up in the digital world. We found ourselves uniquely positioned to help them create content and distribute it in a better way than that they were doing now. We noticed that like working with like a completely, company that's born in the digital age, and like since their establishment they've had on Instagram, like our services don't make the most sense to them because they already know how to do everything that we're sort of offering. But there's like a subset of America and corporate America that are still trying to figure out how to do it in an effective and cost efficient way. That limits communication, because for a client to come to us, they can talk to us to get everything done versus having to talk to their social agency, their production company, their digital agency, and make it have to have more people just to interact and coordinate with all the different facets to get something done. So that's the long-winded version of it. The shorter-winded version of it is we started Cooney Pearson to be a full-service content agency, to be able to offer the full array of services within creating content to clients directly in a vastly more cost-efficient way. We did so because we thought that agencies don't know how to adapt to social and the rapidly adapting spaces of content, and production companies aren't equipped enough to handle strategy and design in the front end of getting a campaign off the ground. So that's kind of that.
I love that pitch. I love the answer.
Yeah.
You definitely have it all together, which is key.
Totally.
I have one of my professors worked at CAA for 30 years.
Yep.
And he always talked about having your 10 second, your 30 and your 60 second long, like elevator pitch. And you definitely have that dialed. So it's good to know like the core of what you're doing. And obviously that like speaks so much when you're like talking to clients, because then you can really give them why they should choose you over, like you said, the saturated industry amount of production companies.
Yeah. And it's we check a lot of boxes for a lot of needs, and I think anytime that anyone can feel like they're like, I need to figure out social, I need to figure out the content for the social, and it's like, you guys will do it all. That's great. It's like your car breaks and you don't want to like take it to a carburetor guy, then the tire guy, then, you don't want to take it to a different spot, different specialist for each thing. You're like, just fix the whole damn thing right now. And I want to be out of here and I'll pay you the money, even if it's a little bit more, because I'm going to save time.
And a lot of those bigger companies are, I mean, I guess, like you said, mid-sized companies just want to like, they're so focused on a lot of other things that they just want to have a reliable production company that they can just say, okay, here's our budget. And they're like, okay, we can make it happen. And then we'll say like, okay, see you in 3 months. And then you just come back with a finished product that is guaranteed that they'll like, and all of it comes together.
Totally. Yeah. And it's actually been really cool too. Cause I mean, like, we break off all those services too, right? So we'll do, post-production on some things just for a certain company. So we have like a full post, like I would say like portion of our business where we strictly just do post-production, and that's super fun because that's totally in my wheelhouse. And then other parts we just do like strategy and development for like a brand, or they'll come to us as like a consultant and just be like, how would you do this if we're going to build like an internal team? So we'll just kind of write the architecture for them, tell them what they need. And it's really been dynamic. And then like other things, we get into like more tech heavy stuff. And like one client was like, hey, can you build us a live broadcast system for doing sales videos? And we like custom printed like and built like this live broadcast Pelican case for them. And they just run and operate it themselves. So it's like, it's really cool, the different sort of aspects of what we've been doing. And for me, like geeking out on all the tech has been really fun. We have a kid here named Jeremy who works for us, and he's like full on engineer brain. And I'm like, come to him with a problem. And I'm like, hey, I want to do this. Is it possible? And he comes back and he's all, it's possible. Here's how much it's going to cost. And here's how fast we can do it. So it's like, for me to be able to have that, and that's like the infrastructure that gets me excited, is like by building this company, those are the fringe things that are so fun to work on. And even though they're internal and no one's ever going to know, or who, or listen to this podcast, it's like, it kind of, no one knows how cool that stuff is. But to me, that's like everything of like, oh, I get to go in the office today and do, build out a live broadcast system, work on a pitch for this company, and then do a voiceover record with Coco Ho or something. It's like, that's the balance that I love, where it's like, I'm using all parts of my brain. There's different teams on different stuff. Maybe I'm working with an editor on a certain day to get this commercial, it's just like, I feel challenged, and it allows my mind to move as fast as it actually moves in my head, and getting stuff done at the same pathway, instead of just feeling anxious and like, okay, nothing's happening. I have all these thoughts and ideas. And with this company, it's like, okay, talk to this guy, work with this thing. And it's like, I'm moving. It's at the rate that they're all moving at, and I can bounce between all three of them. And that's like, to me, like what like makes me sleep at night. So yeah, that's the coolest like added benefit that I didn't really expect, this whole thing.
Yeah, once again, I'm psyched that you found that balance and that you get to go into work not knowing really what you're going to do, and that you have such a variety of things that you get to do on a daily basis. So that's
Yeah.
exciting. Where do you want it to go?
I want the business to continue to grow organically. I think, working with just build and build like this year. Last year, the goal was 3 to 5, like full-time clients, double. I want to double, and then figure out how to build a staff, which would be really fun, because building a production team and actually building a long-term staff, I think, are two different things, but there's obviously a lot of overlap. And then from once we have like infrastructure invested and sort of the machine is working on itself, I think that's at a point where it's like we then offer our involvement in any sort of projects, be it long-term, like a View from a Blue Moon-esque type project, with coming to the table with a serious bit of firepower and resources to be able to be a contributing member in a really cool story. So I think that's like the end all goal, is like allow this company to build and grow and, harvest young minds to work at the company and make really awesome content, and then allow us to give the space as a company to get involved in some really, really cool stories about athletes, people, and brands that would be considered passion projects, but be able to enter the ring as sort of a key player in providing a lot of infrastructure to get the project off the ground.
Well, heck yeah. Thank you so much. Thanks so much for coming on. I really appreciate you talking about like your past and the variety of topics that we covered. And there were a lot of really useful, like the whole reason I started this is because I just want to help people and hopefully like provide them things that they may have not figured out from like a variety of different guests, different genders, like all over. So I think that you definitely gave a lot of that information, and just really thank you for your time.
Yeah, man, that was cool. Thanks for having me on. It was super fun. Let me know if you need anything like retakes or any info or photos or anything.
Yeah, for sure.
It's got to be helpful for you too, just to like talk to different people one-on-one. Like I always find that being like the coolest part of any like interview is just like, shit, I got to like, I would never have talked to that person, unless I had a reason to. And I think that's what's so cool about podcasts in this format and talking with people. It's like, it's just so awesome to really revel in long thoughts that you really generally feel like are too long to talk about in any other setting. So that's really awesome. And thank you for having me on. It was really cool. And I can't wait to see it come out.
Heck yeah, man. Do you have anything else to add?
Oh, nah. I think
okay. Cool. And, I just wanted to thank you again. So for the audience, Blake, I DM'd Blake a while ago, like over a year ago, just a lot. And I just said like, hey, I'd love to talk to you sometime just about View from a Blue Moon. Cause I remember I watched that in 2015 when it came out in my parents' car on the way back from a ski trip, and it like blew my mind. So it was really cool to be able to meet you, and you giving me your time. We met at like a pizza shop, and I got to eat lunch with you, and that was super fun. And now here we are. So thank you so much for everything you've done, and keep killing it. I'm excited to see what you do.
Always, man. And anytime you're in San Diego, hit me up and we'll
for sure
hang out and talk more shop.
Hell yeah. Sounds good. Well, thanks so much, Blake. Man. Have a good night.
Definitely. You
Appreciate
too.
it. See ya.
What's up? Thank you guys so much for listening to I guess one of the two podcasts this week with Blake Vincent Cooney, episode number 13. Thank you guys. I hope you like this YouTube video thing. I'm going to keep it going. Like I said, 2 main videos a week, and then 2 like 10-minute version, like clips, like best clips from those main videos, just in case you guys don't have time to listen to the full podcast. I encourage you to, but people have things to do, so I'm trying to accommodate that. I'm also going to do takeaways at the end of these videos about the top 5 portions of the podcast and like the segments and the things that I can take away, and hopefully summarize it all a little bit better for you guys to understand it. Maybe if you forgot what happened in the first half, or if you only watched part of it, which I completely get. So the first segment I want to talk about is when Blake was talking about his documentary subjects and he said, how do you get them to do what they want in a way that they feel like that they're not doing anything at all? And I think that this is a really important subject, because I think within documentary filmmaking, a lot of the time it's hard to get the subjects to really, well, I guess like he said, do what you want them to do, because you almost wish that they could be actors to like enhance the story or make things the way you want them to, but you can't, because that's the nature of the craft. So I think it's good to think about it like that, in a way that, like what Blake was saying, how you can lay those little booby traps down for them to fall into, to maybe kind of like sway what you want them to do, all the while being really respectful and like making sure that trust between you and the subject is there. But I just thought that segment was really interesting. So yeah, that was at 1313 if you guys want to go and check that out again. Second thing I wanted to talk about, takeaway, was how Blake spent his first Christmas away from out of high school, away from his family. I think that like totally shows an incredible amount of commitment to what he's doing, and I feel like I have a greater concept of like what it takes to really gain more of these opportunities, and I hope you guys do as well. It's pretty nuts that he did that. I definitely didn't do that. And yeah, it's pretty insane. He obviously directed the highest grossing surf film of all time, and that's a big portion of this conversation. It's like 45 minutes. So it's really hard to summarize that, but I just think that you can make your dreams come true if you work hard enough. He's 21 when he started directing View from a Blue Moon, and finished when he was 24. And he talks about in the podcast, he won all those accolades. So it's like, just go for it. Just go for it. Guys and girls, just give her. Anyway, he talked about, I don't want this to be my career for the rest of my life, which is the commercial filmmaking like aspect and making commercials for people. And I think that sometimes in life, like you have to, well, I don't know if the word is settle, but you have to do things, like you need to make money, right? You need to be able to finance what you want to do in your dreams and aspirations. And I think that for a lot of filmmakers, that commercial role, some people are truly passionate about it, but a lot of people are just like, this is a good financial opportunity for me to be able to like fuel my passions and do what I'm doing longer. So I don't know if, like I said, sacrifices, and that it's like good to make a sacrifice and be like, look, I can like fund myself for the next 6 months if I just do this thing, but maybe looking for those opportunities isn't always a bad thing. And he talked about that too. If anything, I'm more not as, like, he talked about how he like liked a lot. And I mean, I love the experiences I've had, but as far as like a long-term thing. Anyway, if you guys want to look more into that, you can go back. But, and I loved this quote at the end, the last segment I titled, and it was also like a good talking point, is a balanced work life and not a work-life balance. And I think that, well, he said that's what he's achieved, which is awesome. Partly, I guess. But I think that within the entrepreneurial space, that is a great summarization. If you just look at like what it takes to make your own business, I've seen it firsthand. I mean, not even to the extent that of like massive companies, just like a restaurant owner working from 8 a.m. when he gets there in the morning till midnight, and then he's like feeding his family, like trying to just make this restaurant work. And I can imagine that having a work-life balance when you're trying to have a balanced work life and trying to make something new is incredibly difficult, and it's something to work towards. And I think that if you guys are in that position where you maybe own a business and you're just trying to find that work-life balance, but it's just struggling to, know that most people probably aren't finding that, and that you're not alone. So yeah, well, thank you guys so much for listening to This World's podcast with Blake Vincent Cuny. I'm sorry if some of this stuff seems like kind of rough. I'm still working out the kinks. I need to make a video thing for the intro. If anyone knows how to do that, let me know. And yeah, all right. Enjoy your day. See you guys on Friday. Peace out. Bye.